Ours is a cycle of hatred. Alliances forged and broken. We have paid the price for sharing this world. And we have forgotten what makes us strong.
When you tell someone that you play World of Warcraft, or even that you used to play it back in the day, if they played it too, inevitably the first question they'll ask is, are you Horde or Alliance? It's at the very core of this game, deep down past the raids and the loot and the leveling up and the class that you play and the guild that you're in. Are you Horde or are you Alliance? And Battle for Azeroth, the 7th expansion for World of Warcraft, seems to understand that. Now that the Legion has been dealt with, Azeroth's attention once again has returned to the fight between orcs and humans, and, well, quite a few other races as well at this stage. The Blood Red Horde versus the Royal Blue Alliance. Now, I've been visiting Blizzard this week, where I've played some of the alpha content that's currently running and chatted with the game's developers about their plans this time around. And there's plenty of detail out there already if you're after it, but to start with, I thought it'd be worth running through the biggest headlines. Here is, in my opinion, what you need to know about World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. Number 1, it now has a release date. Battle for Azeroth goes live on the 14th of August, which is 3 days after my birthday, just saying. Some players are already in the alpha for this expansion as of now, and have been testing a bunch of new zones and content for a little while now, and interestingly, the game's director, Ion Hazakotas, told me that in previous expansions they probably would have transitioned over to the beta by now, and invited more players to take a look, but they're going to hold off until you can experience most of the leveling from 110 to 120, which is the new level cap by the way, before they make that leap. They want the beta to be about polishing more than anything else, and so that will be coming, but at some point soon. Number 2, as is custom now with WoW expansions, we can expect a pre-patch ahead of its release, which will act as something of a prologue to the events of Battle for Azeroth. We're told this will include an event in which Alliance players retake the Undercity from the Forsaken. If you know your Warcraft, you'll know that the Undercity was formerly the human capital of Lordaeron. There's some history there, a bit of bad blood too. And in fact, we've already seen some of this event in the incredibly impressive cinematic trailer for the expansion, in which Sylvanas goes head to head with Anduin, and any suggestion of peace or friendship between these two factions has, well, sort of been left behind, hasn't it? The Horde have their own event too, in which they assault the Night Elf capital of Teldrassil, and this one isn't about capturing it for themselves by the sound of it, it's about burning it to the ground. It's not clear whether this is a response to the assault on Undercity or vice versa, but lore-wise, these are two gigantic events in Warcraft history. Azeroth won't look quite the same after all this. No exact date on that pre-patch, but we're told to expect it in the weeks before the new expansion releases. Number 3, speaking of Azeroth not looking quite the same after these events, it's worth thinking about the geography of World of Warcraft at this point. If Teldrassil is in flames and the Undercity now belongs to the Alliance, what we see here is a split between the two factions across the two major continents. The Horde will control most of Kalimdor, and the Alliance will control the majority of the Eastern Kingdoms. This means that both factions will need to look for new allies that can offer a substantial naval force to help them reclaim what's been lost. Introducing the two key factions in Battle for Azeroth, Kulturas and Zandalar. At least initially, a big part of this expansion will be about the Alliance winning the trust of Kulturas, the home of the Proudmoore family. We expect to see a lot more of Jaina in this expansion, obviously, whereas the Horde will be attempting to gain the allegiance of the Zandalar, a huge tribe of trolls that we've actually been more used to being in conflict with in the past. Presumably, these naval forces will eventually allow the Horde and the Alliance to once again gain a foothold in their opposing territories. I mean, it wouldn't be much of a battle for Azeroth if that didn't happen. Number 4, allied races. Unlike in past expansions that have introduced one or perhaps even two brand new races, Battle for Azeroth is doing something a little different here, allowing players to unlock access to variations of the races we've already been playing. In fact, if you pre-ordered the expansion, some of these are available already. The Lightforged Draenei, Void Elves, Nightborn and High Mountain Tauren, they're actually out there in the game right now. At launch, we're told to also expect the Dark Iron Dwarves and the Maghar Orcs, but there's likely to be more than just that. In fact, the Kulturan humans and Zandalari trolls are also set to become available later on during the expansion. Allied races start at level 20 once they've been unlocked by the player through whatever means, and the race is unlocked across the player's entire account. You can race change another character once you've unlocked access to an allied race or level boost them instead, but apparently you will only get access to a set of race-specific cosmetic gear called heritage armor if you level up the old-fashioned way, from level 20 to level 120. That better be some good-looking armor, my pals. Number 5, Island Expeditions. I actually went hands-on with this particular feature during my visit. As you can see here, it's a free-player setup in which you're dropped off on one of a half dozen islands or so in the Great Sea between Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms, with the goal of collecting as much Azerite, which is a new and powerful resource that's cropped up since the end of Legion, as you can. The mobs you'll encounter will be different each time, as will the location of the Azerite itself, and there'll be various different events that pop up as you explore, maybe prompting a boss fight or almost sort of small side quests that can all contribute to your Azerite fund as you work towards the amount that you need to acquire from the island. That sounds simple enough, but what makes things interesting is that there'll also be another group of free heroes from the opposing faction, either controlled by an advanced NPC AI or by other players, and they'll be looking to do the exact same thing you're doing. You'll need to race against them to acquire the Azerite first, and this will inevitably lead to you skirmishing with them at certain points and trying to slow them down. You get extra Azerite for killing them, usually. These new advanced NPCs, by the way, do seem pretty impressive. I had a gnome rogue, controlled not by a player but by the game, pick me out as an easy target as I was playing a Shadow Priest and had sort of separated from the group. We had a decent 1v1 before he ran off for cover. I chased him right into an ambush with the rest of his party. And I was half embarrassed but also half impressed by what had just happened. It felt like playing against another player. Number 6, the other big one is the Warfronts. These are 20-player PvE setups heavily inspired by the RTS genre, or more specifically, the original Warcraft games. Each Warfront is linked to a zone, for example the Arathi Highlands, that'll be one of them, and depending on who won the last Warfront, that zone and whatever it has to offer will only be available to the victorious faction. This isn't like Wintergrasp, however, in Wrath of the Lich King, where a Horde-dominated server might control an area for weeks on end. Warfronts are region-wide and are designed to keep flipping back and forth, so if the Arathi Highlands belong to the Alliance in Europe, for example, Horde players will need to start stockpiling resources to begin the Warfront. All sorts of things, Azerite, trade items, gold, etc. Once they've stockpiled enough, the Warfront begins, and players of that faction can then queue to take part in it, with 20 players joining forces at a time as they assault the fortress in that particular zone. Within the Warfront encounter, you'll be pushing your line forwards, collecting Warfront-specific resources like iron and wood, which are then spent on upgrading your troops or building catapults, the kind of stuff you'd be doing in an RTS battle, but you're on the ground with those troops. It sounds like one of the best features in Battle for Azeroth, but it's also one of the only bits we haven't seen in action just yet, and I would really like to actually see how it all works properly. Yeah, so looking forward to that cropping up in the alpha or the beta at some point. Yeah, who knows, maybe it'll look as impressive as this cinematic did. It's not going to look like that at all. Wow, come on. Alright, hopefully that was a useful catch-up with everything planned for Battle of Azeroth, and we haven't really talked too much about this expansion on the channel just yet, so I thought this would be the best way to start. If you have any more detailed questions, however, feel free to ask them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer. Thank you for watching, and for the Horde, obviously.
Stand as one!